In other words, don't think, or I shouldn't think, the folks on the street shouldn't think that foreign investors have run away. They're just somewhere at the back here, hiding around, watching through the curtains and see how things move. But if you look at how do you think the player will be for the half-year, full-year earnings? Do you think this will bring some catalyst to some of the sectors that you've talked about, consumers, industrial goods, maybe even energy stocks?
Unfortunately, I think that earnings are going to be strong, but we wouldn't see them affect the market as much as we would have loved to. And you look at the last few years, also 2016, for example, apart from the tier two banks, you see that most tier one banks actually recorded record high profits, but we didn't see that impact them so much. And the 2017 was also a close trend. Earnings were relatively good. We also did not see that impact the market as much as you would have expected, particularly for those stocks. So what I think is that the polls will continue to overshadow the good earnings that these companies are going to be posting.
We're going to be seeing Q2 earnings as we get into July.
Exactly. From mid-July to end of July, we're going to see the early banks post their results.
UBA.
But from August, we're going to see most of the market. Yes.
And then the sing-song of electoral campaign will be more on television and on radio than those earnings.
Yeah, and they definitely overshadow the earnings. But I think that one catalyst we see for the second half of the year is the implementation of the multi-fund structure for the PFAs.
Oh, and that's a question. Is that a hype or hope?
I think it's...
folks are asking me questions via emails and Twitter, and they said, Bosun, explain this to us. Is it a hope or a hype? That's going to be effective July.
Yeah, it's supposed to be effective 1st of July.
Yes.
One thing we see is that if you look at the last year, this policy actually came to the light, I think, around March last year, and it gave them about 6 months. But we saw that rolled over a couple of times, and now we are hoping that by the 1st of July, we are going to see this really kick off. One thing to note is that we've seen a ramp up from a lot of PFAs. So from, say, early last year, the exposure to equity market particularly was about between 7 and 8%. We've seen that move to like between 9 and 10%, in recent months. So it means that a lot of them have continued to, invest more in equity, or the rise or the rally that we saw in equity has also, supported the equity portfolio that we've seen.
Let's talk a little bit about the impact of these, and we can't discuss the impact of these deadly clashes between the herdsmen or the herders and the farmers, and perhaps some criminal elements, the brigandage going on. When the last administration was here, it was the Boko Haram, and the then finance minister, Kunjewela, says we're looking at 0.5% impact on the GDP. We don't have any new numbers from the current administration yet about the impact of that. So we've moved on with the Boko Haram, try to put that under the table. Now we have a new specter of violence at the country's core agricultural belt. Now, this is where you have farms and products that the consumer goods companies need. Whether they're using bone crushers to make gala or other feedstock, animal feeds for UAC, right? For flour mills, right? Honeywell flour, the rest of them. This is that. So talk to us about this part of your report on the cost of insecurity for consumer goods companies.
I think one thing that you'd agree with me is that this issue between the herdsmen and the farmers had been lingering for a long time. We've had this for at least came to line about maybe a year ago. But the biggest problem with this kind of issues is that they always have lagged effect. And immediately it's reported is not when you actually feel the impact on the market. Like the violence that we just recorded last week now, we expect that the impact is going to be much more into the future 6 to 9 months down the line before you begin to see that in terms of agricultural produce and in terms of output. One thing you look at is that if you look at the agricultural numbers for Q1, the agricultural numbers for Q1, GDP was up about 3%. That's actually the lowest we had actually recorded in about 9 quarters, which is actually worrying because the agricultural sector is something that we expect to support, support the economy as a whole. Another thing you also look at is that this is actually a time where a lot of consumer good companies are actually looking towards backward integration, going back to the farm. For example, a lot of people are looking at sourcing sorghum and some of those their inputs
which comes from those states
exactly,
that are troubled. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back on this spending on this agriculture and some spendings in infrastructure and how it goes into the other sector, which is the industrial goods. That's a break. That's Olabode. We'll be right back in two. The head of research at Vetiva is wrapping up the program. With the next 4 minutes, let's continue this conversation a little bit. Let's continue from where you stopped as far as the impact of the insecurity on agriculture and on consumer goods. So we have a few names that we need to be on the lookout for. But do you think this will be significant to dent their earnings? We saw what happens to USC.
I think we're likely going to see, an upward tick in terms of their cost of their input cost. FX has been stable, was one thing we're happy about, but this backward integration that we've seen recently is going to be impacted by the violence or the volatility in this middle belt or the food basket region of the country. Yeah. So we expect that we're going to see a slight uptick in that part of their earnings. But the good news is that interest rate relatively to where we were last year has come down. So in terms of their interest cost also, we expect that to moderate.
So that could balance out a little bit? Not significant dent?
Yeah.
But how do you think this massive infrastructure spending will be able to impact on the big boys in the consumer, in the industrial goods space, Julius Berger, the construction, the cement makers?
I think the most impact is going to be on the cement makers. A lot of the cement makers had already, attributed some of their good performance in the first half of the year to stronger demand from government. And we know that, because we are in an election period, there's going to be the need to, to spend more, to try as much as possible to fulfill your electoral promises.
So even for struggling cement makers like Lafarge Africa, I can see the price moving up over the last few sessions.
I think Lafarge Africa in Nigeria, they've been doing well. The biggest problem they have is actually the South African business. The South African business is not doing well at all, and it's actually dragged to the
Nigerian market. Yes. Okay, so for the cement makers, you think that's one of your good pick?
Yeah,
for the rest of 2018.
I think the cement makers would actually, will actually post very good numbers in 2018. Dangote Cement, surely.
And finally, where do you think it will all pace out for? And finally, that is on the banks. Let us end it up with the banks for the second half of the year. How do you think all this put together will deliver what you can call my index return?
I think the banking sector will outperform the market in terms of return this year. They outperformed the market last year, and I think 2 years ago they would outperform the market this year again. But I think the performance is going to be relatively skewed towards some of the big boys in the market. Zenith Bank, GT Bank would continue to do well. They are going to report very good numbers. But I think the segment to actually watch out for is the tier 2 names in the banking sector. When we see the market improve, I think these guys are going to benefit.
You keep talking about the tier 2 banks.
Positive.
I like that hope. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Olabode, head of research at Vetiva Capital Management, putting some flesh on this 85-page document in Nigeria in the shadows of 2019 elections. You may want to read that up. Today, we have the Lord Mayor of London doing the closing bell on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. We'll be right there and see how this Nigeria-UK bilateral relations is firming up. Let's keep the rest of this conversation till tomorrow, Friday. And this is the last trading day for June, and goodbye to the first half of the year, and we welcome the second half. Let's welcome our news team. As always, news comes first here on Channels Television, Nigeria's news leader. I'll see you again in another 24 hours. Bye for now.